Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great conference today, and thank you for joining us. My name is John Rouse. I'm the Worldwide Business Development Manager for AWS AI Services. And with me is Nate Bachmeyer. He's our Senior Solution Architect. Before we get going, I'm just curious, how many people have ever been exposed to maybe some inappropriate or offensive material, or have your personal information ever been compromised? I know I have. I know some neighbors have. And so today we're going to talk briefly about the importance of content moderation across industries, but most importantly about how to bring this together technically, as well as how to create a safe online environment while minimizing moderation costs. And I'm sure everyone wants a clean, safe, and inclusive digital space. So for today's agenda, I'm going to show you sort of the impact of what's becoming the user-generated content era. We call it UGC, and how AI and ML can help you manage it with efficiencies. Second, I'll walk you through sort of the multimodal capabilities that AWS AI Services deliver today, and look at key industries in the UGC era, and the importance of moderation to keep players, buyers, sellers, and everyone digitally safe and engaged. Next, Nate will take over the presentation and show us first how to bring all of the AWS AI services together to build a self-managed or customizable moderation solution with a demonstration of our moderation capabilities. And finally, we'll show you how to engage with our teams, where to obtain more resources, and how to try all of our AI services. And then we'll be open to Q&A. As well as we're going through the presentation today, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We're more than happy to redact them, moderate them, or maybe answer them, depending on what you're doing. So let's get started. So today, the daily volume of user-generated content, UGC, and third-party content has been increasing substantially in industries such as social media, gaming, online forums, as well as matrimonial and photo sharing websites. And companies are struggling to deal with the sudden increase of volume, complexity, and costs associated with content moderation. By 2028, the global UGC platform industry is expected to expand to $10 billion at a compound annual growth rate of 26.6%. But what's important is that 79% of consumer decisions are influenced by UGC. And UGC makes today about 80% of all web content today. So what are customers doing to cope with the cost, volume, and complexity? They're turning to AI and ML and other technologies such as deep learning and natural language processing to moderate content accurately and efficiently. Customers in modern industries such as social media, fantasy sports, and gaming, and others, and traditional verticals such as financial services and healthcare are facing the same needs and issues. The high volume of content, moderation, complexity, processes of depending heavily on human skills, guidelines, and compliances, and all share the same objective: to improve safe online environment while reducing moderation costs. We're engaged with one company today where they're getting user-generated content where they're uploading video files that are typically around 30 minutes each, and they're sort of to do what maybe you're walking in the forest and you're posting something, or how to make a meal. So this company wanted to make sure right now they're presently moderating it all by humans, and they're only able to do roughly about 100 videos a month. So they're looking now to automate this so they can have their consumers upload more content. And so what they want to moderate, one, is to make sure that they're not uploading inappropriate images or some toxic language, as well as they wanted to prevent, from an advertising perspective, for people to put in brand logos that they shouldn't be on those videos. So by using AI, hopefully they can expand and offer more content for their customer base. So as well as, let's take a look at the moderation capabilities for individual media types, and we can see how to bring them all together, how to deliver a multimodal moderation solution. So startups in social media and gaming and other industries must ensure that their customers collaborate responsibly while keeping moderation costs down. Businesses in broadcasting and media industries often find it difficult to efficiently add ratings to content type pieces or format that comply to guidelines for different markets and audiences. So you can just imagine there's companies that they're reviewing movies that are going out, and they want to make sure that content is rated for, if it needs to be rated, before children that are under the age 12 or 21. They're reviewing this before it's released out to the marketplace. As well as other organizations in financial and healthcare services find it challenging to protect personal information and health information. So we call PII or PHI across internal and external environments and processes. Just recently, a neighbor was telling me that a few years ago that her identity was compromised, and it took her 3 years to get that resolved. So someone was using her identity to do things, and she doesn't know how someone got her social security number and birth date and that. So you can see the importance, and it might not affect you, but your members, your community, or even within your corporation. As well as the ever-increasing volume and variety and complexity of UGC makes traditional human moderation workflows challenging to scale and to protect users. AWS AI services for moderation and contextual insight and human-in-the-loop moderation can be leveraged to streamline and automate your image and video moderation workflows. So moderation across 1, 2, or more media types and data sources, plus the addition of AI insights such as sentiment and context and human reviews to deliver high levels of accuracy and to continue publishing prediction models. It gives you a complete solution that solves your moderation needs and helps you increase your speed to market and lower your operational costs. Regardless of whether you're a gaming, social media startup, or even a well-established e-commerce or advertising or financial institution. So here are our online community members. They expect really an inclusive, one is a safe and an inclusive environment where they can freely consume and contribute images, videos, text, and audio. So the ever-increasing, again, volume, variety, and complexity of UGC make traditional human moderation workflows challenging to scale and to protect users. So the multimodal moderation, that's the moderation of more than one media type, is possible with AWS's AI services. With image moderation, you can detect explicit adult or suggestive content in both images and videos. With video moderation, you can automatically search and organize labels with a hierarchical taxonomy that provides both a top-level category, such as suggestive, and a nuanced second-level category to create granular business rules for different geographies, target audiences, time of day, and so on. Text detection can be used for images and videos to read text and then check it against your own list of prohibited words or phrases out there. And then audio moderation allows you to detect profanity or hate speech in videos that you can convert speech to text and then check it against a similar list. So let's explore now with Nate.
Thanks. So in this diagram, this is our reference architecture for how we see a lot of customers approaching adding content moderation to their web applications and mobile applications. So starting at the left and working our way across, where we see a lot of customers begin is using something like AWS Amplify. And so Amplify is a set of purpose-built tools that makes it very easy to quickly create React, Angular type applications and get these stood up in the cloud without a lot of friction. Once you stood up your front end, then you start needing other capabilities, such as API management, content delivery networks, so on and so forth. And AWS gives you those capabilities out of the box without needing to worry about scaling that infrastructure through services like Amazon API Gateway, Amazon CloudFront. Now, once you've gotten all of your UGC content into the cloud, the next question is, what do you do with it? And so what we typically see is that it gets staged inside of S3. And so Amazon S3 is our object storage. It supports virtually any scale. You can put your audio, your video, rich text documents, any of these types of artifacts, more than capable of handling. So once you've staged the content, then the question is, what exactly are you going to do with it? And so there's a couple of different patterns that we tend to see. So the first is, once you've placed the content in S3, you typically will launch some sort of asynchronous process. And from here, this is a place where Event Bridge, which is our event bus, really comes into play. You can create very sophisticated rules for listening to these files landing in S3 and then calling off to REST APIs or forwarding those notifications to like an Amazon Lambda function, or maybe running some process in a container or EC2. Another pattern that we are starting to see a lot of is that from API Gateway, there is now support for service integrations to things like Amazon step functions. And so this actually ends up becoming a very cool pattern where without having to write code, you can have from the upcoming REST API, it will trigger over to the step function. The step function you can think of as it's just a state machine. It can orchestrate your call across multiple different services, either Amazon services, your custom services. Another thing that is really that really makes this pattern quite powerful is that we recently added support for over 9,000 APIs without having to write custom code. And so this gives you the ability that as this content is coming in from API Gateway, you're going to trigger the state machine. The state machine is going to call over to, say, Recognition to do computer vision. It's going to call over to Amazon Comprehend to do natural language processing, so on and so forth. And so you can take and you can instrument these workflows using either very little code or only having to add code at very specific points. So for example, you can take and you can bring all these pieces together for something like moderating images and video. And so we'll talk about this a lot more in the second half. But you can imagine that as this audio video file comes in, that you're going to want to take and transcribe that audio into text. You're going to want to take and sample different frames from within that video, and then you're going to want to moderate both the text and moderate the images to make sure that it meets whatever is your user guidelines. Now, we'll talk a lot more about how these different patterns come together in the second half. At this time, I'd also like to highlight two other services that really come into play here. So the first one is Amazon SageMaker Ground Truth. So the point of SageMaker Ground Truth is that it makes it very easy for you to collect data that you need to do custom labeling on. So for example, as content is coming in, you're going to start finding things that are very domain specific that are not supported out of the box. And so with Amazon SageMaker Ground Truth, it makes it very easy for you to take all that content in that needs custom labels and then route it to either your private workforce or to Amazon Mechanical Turk and crowdsource it out. Once you've labeled all of this custom data, you can then take and pull it back in to services like Amazon Recognition, Comprehend, and Transcribe, and bring in your custom vocabularies and your custom definitions. And then once again, you can bring that back into the system so that as more content comes in, it understands your custom vocabulary, it knows the types of things that you're looking for that are very specific to your business. The other piece that is really handy is called Amazon Augmented AI, or A2I. So what this lets you do is for those situations where you moderated the content, you're mostly sure that it's okay, but you're not 100% sure. Or you can take and define policies that define what's that gray zone, and only for those gray zone, you take and you forward that off to a human in the loop. And so you can have a human that says, yes, I approve this or I don't approve this, and then it will route back and continue through your workflows. A2I is supported for most of these services that I'm going to talk about. But with that, let's move forward. So one of the things you'll notice is that I use Amazon step functions as our example for all of these diagrams. One of the things that's great about it is that it gives you a visual way of looking at how you would actually structure these. And it also lists off what are the actual APIs that you would use if you want to implement this on your own. So let's say, for example, that you're going to moderate images and photos. So there's two different operations that you would want to look at. The first is you would want to call detect moderation labels. And so this is going to give you that taxonomy that John mentioned earlier, that this contains something suggestive and what type of suggestiveness is it. Along with this, another thing that you're likely going to want to look at is detecting text. So let's say, for example, that it contains, I don't know, curse words or vulgarity, so on and so forth. So recognition gives you the capabilities out of the box to detect language in 17 different languages and extrapolate out those words and phrases. Once you've extrapolated that, it's very easy for you to then take that plain text and say, just send that off to my moderate text workflow. Similarly, if you detected those labels, you're going to get back a nice simple payload that says this is the structure. You can then forward that off to something like an Amazon Lambda function and do whatever is the next step in your business process. So next, let's talk about how exactly would you moderate movies with scenes. And so one of the things that Rekognition gives you out of the box is what we call the segmentation API. And so the segmentation API has the capabilities that you can point it at a video, and it will tell you that this is an opening credit screen, this is a scene transition, here's the rolling credits at the end, so on and so forth. And so this actually makes it easy for you to start breaking up long videos into manageable chunks. The first, what you would do is you would identify where are those segments, and then from here you could farm that out across multiple processing units and very quickly process large videos.
So here's an example, a great example from what just Nate talked about. Is a company called Flipboard. And maybe some of you are familiar with who Flipboard is, but if not, Flipboard is a content recommendation platform that enables publishers, creators, and curators to share stories with their readers to help them stay up to date on their passions and interests. They knew that they needed an AI and ML content moderation solution to build models for their system internally, but they found out was very labor intensive and lacked the accuracy necessary to meet their high quality standards Flipboard users expect. So today, they can efficiently intercept unwanted content and receive a much lower false alarms by leveraging Amazon Rekognition's robust hierarchical taxonomy, and they're able to process approximately 90 million images per day, and intercepting an average of 63,000 images and videos that violate their guidelines on a daily basis, which is truly amazing. And to maintain a safe and inclusive environment and to confirm that all their images comply with their platform at scale, it is crucial to implement a content moderation workflow using machine learning. This is where Amazon Rekognition became the right solution for Flipboard's product. Now Nate is going to show us how to moderate videos.
Thanks. And so how we typically see that you're going to moderate video is you're going to need two different paths. So first you're going to take and transcribe the audio out of it and continue processing it using a workflow that we're going to show you in just a second. In parallel, what we tend to see is that while there's 24 frames every second, you don't need to actually check every single frame. And depending as to how active your video is, maybe you take 1 frame a second every 5 seconds. Just kind of decide what is the appropriate point. Now, one thing that you may wonder is that if I'm going to implement this as a serverless pattern, and so I'm going to have a Lambda that's going to read a frame, Another Lambda is going to read another frame. Doesn't this mean that I'm going to start downloading the same file over and over and over and over from S3? And that's a lot of traffic, and that's just a lot of waste. So there's actually a very efficient pattern that you can add to this, that when you start this video processing, you can take that file from S3 and put it inside of Amazon Elastic File System, EFS. And so EFS is our network file system service. You can directly mount that into Lambda. And then once you are in EFS, you can open up a handle to the file, and then you have the ability that you can seek to different offsets. And this gives you the ability that now you are no longer downloading this massive file over and over and over. And so similarly, when we talked about the segmentation API, so the way that this works is there's two operations. First, you say start the segmentation detection, and this is going to kick off an asynchronous process, and it's going to run for however long it's going to run. Now, what you can do is you can just periodically check the status by calling get segmentation detection. Within this payload, it's going to tell you whether it's in progress, it's failed, it's completed, and if it has succeeded, it's going to give you the ability that you can paginate all of the different segments that were detected. And so this gives you the ability that once you are at a point that it has completed, now you just need to enumerate across each of the segments and say, based off of this information, let's pass this to our video monitoring workflow that we just covered.
Okay. So here's a cool story for the gaming industry where they're offering, for the gaming community, a safe environment to socialize and share entertaining content. So Moby Social is a leading mobile software company focused on building a social network and gaming apps to more than 10 million gaming streamers and players. They use AWS's moderation capabilities to label content coming from its community with exceptional category granularity. So they are able to reduce their manual operation costs by 95% and increase their accuracy of its predictions and the scalability of its operations. These efficiencies enabled them to allocate their engineering resources better. So with this use case, I was just talking to my son who's a teenager. He's in high school and he's a gamer. I had to retire from my gaming many years ago because I can't keep up. But I asked him, in the gaming community, is there a lot of toxicity? And he's like, Dad, yeah, there is. And I was really surprised to hear that from him. And as well as I said, within your classmates, the girls, do they play, games? And he said no, because they're so abusive to females playing in the gaming industry. So, one of the great things, with content moderation, hopefully we can make it sort of an inclusive environment so everyone can go and share and play with these games. So, it's just good. It's interesting to get a perspective for some people, younger people that are playing these, and how it's affecting different folks. And maybe mentioned earlier is, a lot of people, when they have an experience of a toxic environment, studies have showed over 40% people never go back to that app again or that game again. So you can see the value of companies in the gaming industry and social media, that it's important to provide these safe environments so they don't lose their users. Now I'm going to let Nate continue on.
Sure. So the next one, let's talk about how you're actually going to moderate audio. And so there's two different workflows depending as to whether you're going to moderate some file that's already in S3 or if it's a continuous stream. So first, let's say that it's a file that's already in S3. What you can do is you can start a transcription job similar to the other APIs. You do a polling loop to see until it's complete. Depending as to how large this file is, this could be seconds to minutes to hours, depending as to how large and how much content you're pushing through here. But once you've reached the point that the get transcription job says that it is completed, then it just becomes a matter of looking at the result. And so the result is going to be two files output. The first is what was the actual transcription of the content. The second is going to be what is the redacted transcription. And so one thing you can do is you can place into here your own custom vocabularies. So let's say that there's not only just the standard terms that you want to remove, but maybe there's some specific group of hateful speech towards your audience. You can say that I also want to redact that as well. And then once it's redacted, you have that feed. And if there's multiple people talking, it will tell you that person number 1 said X, person number 2 said Y. But this gives you really a nice capability that if you just want to moderate it and just return it back to the end users, you don't really want to have to do any post-processing. You can just return them the redacted feed, knowing that it's removed all the toxicity that you didn't want your users to see in the first place. Now, let's say that it's more of like a live audio feed. This could be radio, it could be podcasts, it could be an ongoing conference call, so on and so forth. So the way that we do this is very similar. First, you start a streaming transcription job, and this is going to create an endpoint for you. Once that endpoint is created, you just take and you post chunks of audio content to it. You can post this over HTTP2 or over WebSockets. And as these chunks go to the endpoint, what it's going to do is it's going to buffer it. And so as it's buffering, you're going to get back multiple responses. And so the first response might say that the audio chunk you gave me said, hi, how, and it will say this is a partial statement. It contains hi, how. But it's going to continue buffering that until later on it's going to say, hi, how are you, question mark. Now we have a full statement, and you will get another response telling you that this is a complete transcription unit. And so once you have this, then it just becomes a simple matter of, let's go take the complete units that we have, or the partial, depending on your use case, and we can just send this to our moderate text workflow, the same as what we would have done in the audio stream.
So here's another example. DNA is one of Japan's leading internet service companies with major business areas in mobile games, sports, live streaming, healthcare, automotive. Now offer a live audio distribution app called Voice Pukacha. So DNA is using Amazon Transcribe and its custom vocabulary feature to identify and redact words that are typically slang and not recognized by standard speech-to-text services. So by using Amazon Transcribe, it provides a higher detection accuracy with custom vocabulary and fast response times to keep their communities safe and engaged. We're seeing a lot of interest these days in social media and even in the gaming industry where they want to do live audio moderation on it. And it might not be, say, in real time, but almost in real time, where they want to take snippets and they want to understand what their consumers are using. And if they're broadcasting toxic things, they want to then go to A to I, as Nate was mentioning earlier, and sort of moderate that and then reach out to those people and say, hey, you know what? You're not following our guidelines. This is a warning. Or if they continue, companies can make decisions, right? Do they want to maybe say that you're not allowed to be on this service for a week, a month, or so on? So again, their companies are concerned. They want to make sure that they're creating this clean, safe environment. And so it's interesting how audio moderation is going to evolve over the coming months, weeks, and years. Okay?
So now let's take a look at all of these different patterns which allow us to get text out of the different formats into eventually our plain text piece. And so what we tend to see is that your users are going to collaborate across multiple languages in multiple market segments, so on and so forth. Now, while they want to be able to communicate in French and German and Spanish, it's likely that your team doesn't have the expertise to actually manage all of these different languages. And so what you can do here is you can first use Amazon Comprehend to detect what language the text is taking place in. And then if it's something that your team doesn't support, you can use Amazon Translate to translate into your preferred language. Translate has support for keeping track of that contextual information. And once you've done that translation, or you've got it in a state that it's ready to actually examine, From here, what you do is you just pass this to your moderation text workflow, and off you go. Now, another use case that we want to highlight is what do you do for rich text documents? So yesterday, we had someone that came up afterwards and said that they have a ton of driver's licenses. And so what they want to do is have a way that they can remove the driver's license ID from their pictures, because they still need to show parts of it to their support agents, but they don't want to show all of those pieces. And so this is a place where something like Amazon Textract can come into place. And so with Textract, there's APIs for examining documents. They will identify where are the pages, what are the tables, what are the key value pieces on there. You can say, here is a ID, analyze it, and it will take and it will identify that this field looks like it's a date of birth, here's the value, here's the bounding box around it. And so this gives you the capabilities that you can start really examining documents that are more of like a PDF or a scanned piece, or maybe it's written in hand text. And once you've pulled in that content and you've been able to identify what it says, you can start using that same moderate text workflow. You can start using those bounding boxes and say, let's just black out this piece, let's put a censor bar over that, and you can continue building these same workflows. Now, at the bottom of all of this is it all comes down to that uncovering what is the actual insights into that plain text. And so the way that we typically see customers approach this is there are a handful of APIs within Amazon Comprehend where you can detect entities, you can detect the sentiment, you can detect where PII takes place. Comprehend also supports that you can bring in custom entities. So let's say, for example, you want to special case your CEO. You could define them as a custom entity. Your product names, your whatever other pieces you want to look at specifically. Once you've called these different operations, they all return back a very standardized response where you can then start acting on what was actually found. And depending on your use case, you can either accept it, decline it, but you have the flexibility that you're only focusing on, this is an API, I get back a response, what is the business value I want to add on to that, and then focus on just that piece. You don't need to understand natural language processing, and the same holds true for all the other pieces. You don't need to understand how computer vision works to use a service like Amazon Recognition. And across all of these different examples, it's all call an endpoint, get back the response, and continue marching forward with your job.
Okay. So addressing your content moderation needs really requires a combination of computer vision, text and language transform, and other AI and ML capabilities to efficiently moderate the increasing influx of user-generated content and sensitive information. So with AWS AI services, you can leverage to streamline and automate your images, videos, text, and audio moderation workflows. So again, just to sort of go, so Amazon Recognition, it allows you to identify objects, people, text, scenes, and activities, and images and videos, and it can be detected to moderate inappropriate content as well. Amazon Transcribe is an automatic speech recognition, so ASR, service that uses machine learning models to convert audio to text. And Amazon Translate is a text translation service that uses advanced ML technologies to provide a higher quality translation on demand. And just earlier this year, we launched a new API for Translate with the API profanity filter, as Nate mentioned earlier. Amazon Comprehend uses natural language processing to extract insights about content of documents. Amazon Comprehend, again, processes text and images and files and semi-structured documents such as Adobe PDF and Microsoft Word documents. And then augmented AI or Amazon, augmented AI or A2I makes it easy to build workflows required for human review, whether moderation runs on AWS or not. So Nate's going to come in and just sort of, again, talk about how do you pull all these services together.
Thank you. So this is AWS content analysis. It's one of the many examples that we have in the AWS Solutions library. This is something that you can go pull up from the library, click the button, it will deploy into your account in about 20 minutes and give you a full environment so you can start playing with all these APIs and see what's available out of the box. Similar to the reference architecture at the beginning, this one is going to have users coming in through CloudFront, our content delivery network. CloudFront is then going to push to the edge your RESTful APIs. It's going to take your static S3 content for the website, your CSS and JavaScript files, push all that out so that your users are going to be able to access that quickly. Next, it's going to use Amazon Cognito, which is our identity service. This gives you a very simple way that you can do user management out of the box. With this example, it's going to use Cognito to add authentication and authorization to the API gateway, which is going to manage all of the different operations you have. So for example, you can specify that there's a group of your users that are allowed to upload content. There's another group that's only allowed to view content. And through Cognito, operations like this are pretty straightforward. From here, you can see that it's set up where there is a control plane and a data plane. As content moves through the control plane, they are going to use a combination of Amazon Lambda functions to perform various specific operations to set things up. It's going to store some of the content, so it's keeping track of what you've already imported in DynamoDB, which is our NoSQL key value store. Anywhere that you need to just fetch records by the primary key, DynamoDB is one of the least expensive ways you can do that. And then similar to what we just covered, using Amazon step functions to orchestrate all of these different pieces without having to write a bunch of custom code and really being able to just focus on, these are a bunch of APIs, these are a bunch of service endpoints, let's just bring it all together and orchestrate it as a coherent operation. Once the content has been verified as meeting your criteria, it's going to push it down into the data plane where all of the labels that it finds, things like this picture contains a cat, all of those types of metadata all push into Amazon OpenSearch, successor to Amazon Elasticsearch. And this is going to give you the ability that you can do full text searches and find your cat videos a lot more simple and easy. So the last thing that we want to highlight here is Amazon Ground Truth Plus. It's a turnkey solution. So one of the things that you may remember when I talked about Ground Truth at the beginning of this is that it supports that you can either route all of that data labeling to your private workforce, or you can route it through crowdsourcing through Mechanical Turk. Now the challenge is that for a lot of customers, they want something that's kind of in the middle. They don't want to have to go hire a custom workforce, but they don't want to just trust the public internet to go do all this data labeling. Maybe it contains sensitive information or business critical rules. And so this is where Ground Truth Plus comes into play, where you can bring in specialized resources on a temporary basis that have attestations, that have certifications, that demonstrates that they know how to do these tasks. They've gone through background checks and whatever additional requirements you have. This is really useful for situations like, let's say, for example, you need to translate a bunch of documents from Russian, or you have some very specialized need. Instead of going out, hiring all these people, going and finding a consulting group that's going to have these capabilities, you can just go through Ground Truth Plus. AWS will provide those resources. Once they've completed the task, they can go away. You stop paying for them. When you need them again, they come back.
So we have a little demo for you guys.
Good afternoon. I'm Nate Bachmeyer, Senior Solutions Architect with AWS. Today I'm going to be giving a quick demo of Media to Cloud. You can download this at the AWS Solutions Library. Once you're at this page, just scroll down and click Launch in AWS Console. Follow the guide and it will get this installed in your account in about 25 minutes. After installing this example, you should be able to log into a CloudFront web portal. From here, all you have to do is select a handful of example files, drop them over here, say Next. Next. From here, you can take and you can control all of the different AWS AI service parameters for extracting content from audio, video, or rich text documents. You can control things like what is the confidence, where you want to cut it off. You can have custom collections. And so a collection is a group of celebrities that are celebrities to you. These could be your classmates, they could be your coworkers, so on and so forth. You can specify that you want to extract text, but only from a section of images. If you have custom models, let's say, for example, that there's something in particular that you want to look for. Maybe it's your logo, maybe it's a competitor's logo, so on and so forth. Things that you just don't want side by side with your brand. Any of those types of things you can take and define as custom models. You can specify what are the frame rates that you want to sample if it's a video. How is it you want transcriptions to work? Let's say that the video contains audio. How do you want that to work? Should it auto-detect the language? Should you assume that it's French or Spanish? You can also provide custom vocabularies. And so let's say that you wanted to include your product names. You could specify those as unique terms so that they don't get messed up during the translation. Similarly, for Comprehend, our natural language processing service, you can specify that you're interested in sentiment analysis or key phrase detection. Once you've configured this, I'm just going to leave it with the defaults for right now. You simply say Next, and then click Start. I'm going to pause it here. It only takes a couple of seconds to finish importing, but let's see what we get out of this. So the first example that I want to show you is a beer video. This is a video that I shot using my cell phone and a empty beer bottle. So when we click into it, what we can see is that these are all of the different operations that ran. Let's say that we're interested in the recognition labels. Let's turn these on. And hit play. And so initially, it says that there's nothing to see here. But as soon as we reach this piece right here, see, well, using the recognition APIs, it can determine that this is where we needed to moderate some content. We can see that these are the types of things that were flagged. Now, meanwhile, as it goes out of frame, at this point, so I've turned the bottle backwards. And at this point, it says that it is not confident enough that it's an alcoholic container, but it is still confident that this is a beverage and drink. And so this would be a really good place for something like augmented AI. And so with A to I, what you could do is you could say that this may be on the edge. I don't know if we should be moderating this. So let's actually hand this over to a human to do a deeper dive. And so once that human receives this video, through A to I, they would see this is the thing which is being flagged. As the human looks at it, they'll probably say, yeah, that looks like a beer bottle. And then whether or not that's appropriate depends on your particular situation. Now let's see what happens with the photos that we've imported. First, we can see that from the moderation that it is fairly confident that this is some sort of a drug product. Makes sense. It's got a marijuana logo on it. At a minimum, it's probably a tobacco product. The other thing that you can see from here is that media to cloud will tell you how long each of these operations took. And so for this particular one, about just a little under a second to moderate this image, which means that this is happening fast enough that you could have this as part of an interactive workflow. Now, let's say that you were going to upload some long movie. In that case, it's going to take longer, but for simple things like images and PDF documents, things like that, you should be looking at, single-digit seconds, even for massive documents. Now, for the last document that was uploaded, which was a movie poster. From here, you can very quickly and easily see that using the built-in APIs, it's able to determine that there are 4 people in here. It's able to start labeling that these are humans, they're wearing evening gowns, it's fashionable. And so what you can quickly see from this, and you should try this with your own data, is that you can start extracting out things which are relevant and things that are not relevant to your particular audience. In this particular case, it found that these 4 people are media celebrities. There's Sarah Jessica Parker. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you do not have to use media celebrities. You can use custom celebrity groups, which include your coworkers, friends, family, anything along those lines. Now, in this particular poster, I didn't find anything which needs to be moderated. But once again, we can come here and see that these operations are not exactly taking too long. They're about a second apiece, once again, which means that it's fast enough that you can start relying on these being part of interactive queries.
So before we get to the next step, I was wondering, does anyone have any questions regarding the demo that we just showed you?
I have lots of questions.
Ask, okay. We might just redact all your questions, but go ahead and ask.
Yeah, you've given so much information that I'm not really sure where to start. Where you last showed the celebrities, or it detected that they were celebrities and also told you who they were. How did that piece come about? Does it keep track of faces and is able to go out there and recognize that, oh, this is Sarah Jessica Parker, this is someone else that added that? How does that all happen?
So the question is, how exactly is it able to figure out that that's Sarah Jessica Parker? Yeah. And so the way that Amazon recognition works is there is a set of APIs for face analysis. And so out of the box, you can ask it to just take a look. Are these 2 people the same? It'll do a face comparison. It can extract out metadata. For example, this person is in their mid-30s, so on and so forth. These types of details are out of the box. And then from here, when you start getting into, so who exactly is it? There's a notion of what they call face collections. And so there is one Uber one that Amazon manages, which is full of media celebrities. And by default, you can take and you can query our global index. Now, for a lot of use cases, you actually don't want the media celebrities. You want to be able to find John. And so for this, the way that you approach this is that you would first create a custom collection. You can create as many of them as you want. Each one can hold about 20 million faces. And then what you do is you take pictures of John and you say, index into my collection. And then when I have another image, I can say, search my collection for this person. And it will take and it will go through. And we don't actually store the physical image. We store metadata about their facial geometry. And then based off of that, we can tell you that you are this person, which you gave us this tag. And we'll return back that these two are a match. We're 80% confident, 90%, whatever it may be. And this is the external ID that you gave us.
Any other questions?
I'll wait until you're finished.
Oh, go ahead.
So for the moderation, when you're changing it, can you make that trigger on download? So if you're going to moderate content of any type, can you trigger it on download?
So the question is, when can you trigger that moderation to take place? And so one of the things that's really kind of nice about all these APIs is that they are interactive. And so this means that you could call that API as part of your upload feed. You could call it as part of the download operation. I could see a situation where, let's say that you're consuming hundreds of thousands of images, and it's not likely that all of them are going to be seen. I could see where you would build into your downloader that when someone requests that image, you go check some table, some, I don't know, DynamoDB type place that says, I've already moderated this. If not, go do that operation in real time and then return it back. Any of those types of workflows are very easy to set up.
Nate, can you just mention sort of what is sort of like the threshold? So you can set different thresholds, right, or accuracy. Can you maybe dive in, like some use cases you might want very high accuracy and other ones you don't need high accuracy?
Oh, 100%. So when you do moderation, or when you call almost all of the APIs across any of these services, there is a notion that you can say only return results that you are X% confident. And so let's say that this is going to be something that you're going to broadcast out to your entire user base. You might want to crank that slider up a lot more versus if it's something that's just going to be part of an internal email, something to that effect. And so you have the flexibility to decide, and you also have the flexibility to define policies that say that, if it's on the edge, then bring in humans to actually do that final verification.
Any other questions? You sure?
The voice recognition, or if someone is speaking, let's say they start out speaking English, and in that sentence, or in the sentence or text that they're speaking, they switch over to a different language and then switch back to English. How easily is that caught? Question number one. The other question is, someone who's speaking English, let's say an American speaking English versus someone from Great Britain speaking English. Some words are slightly different. The accent is different. How do you detect that and transcribe that?
So the question is, what happens when I'm doing transcriptions and I'm going to mix and match either languages or dialects? And so that is a great question that I think that we need to test with your data. But what I would expect is that it should tell you that this was the detected language for this piece. This is for the next piece. That's what I would expect to happen. But we definitely need to test it with your data. And then from there, what you could do is you could chunk that up and then use Amazon Comprehend to say, for this sentence, detect the language. And then from there, you could incorporate Amazon Translate. And so Translate supports, I think it's 70 languages plus I don't know how many dialects. And so this gives you a fairly decent coverage. But we definitely need to take a look at your data and see how exactly all these pieces would come together.
Okay.
And perfect, thank you. Any other questions, anyone? So there's a couple ways that you can get started with content moderation. So one is you can try our AI services, of course, at zero cost, no cost, and access our developer guides, tutorials, GitHub repositories. We have different use case videos, webinars, and we have a Get Started guide. Our pricing is public, so you can see the pricing for each of the services out there, as well as AWS experts and solution architects can help you with any additional information or resources needed to get started. So if you're not sure how to get started, where, or you have a login and you need just some basic assistance, we're more than happy to assist you, even depending on where you're based locally or globally. And then as well as, contact us to help you find the right partner, or you can explore our AWS partner network to get a POC started. So depending on your company or your expertise, you might be able to find to run a pilot yourself, or we have software partners that can help build that for you, or they might even have a turnkey solution that, depending on your needs, they can provide it as well. So the last is we encourage you to engage with our training and certification content today. Skill Builder is one of our online learning centers that makes it easier for anyone, from beginners to experienced professionals, to build an AWS cloud. As well as we offer over 500 plus digital courses today. Within Skill Builder, you can take advantage of our flexible learning plans, which offer suggested digital courses aligned to your specific domain or job roles out there. As well as you can build your skills and consider preparing for one of our 11 AWS certifications. These industry-recognized certifications span foundationally, professionally, and specialty levels to validate AWS knowledge and skills and build your credibility and confidence out there. You can participate in discussions, forums, and learning and network opportunities and challenges from AWS team to earn rewards and recognition out there. So one is you can scan one or both of these QR codes on the screen to get started with your cloud skill training and certification. Again, thank you so much for coming today, as well as please feel free to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to assist. Enjoy the rest of the day.